The stars looked different this far from Earth. Captain Greg Martinez stood on the bridge of the Aurora's edge, watching the view screen display hundreds of unknown solar systems. His ship had been traveling for 3 months using the new faster-than-light drive that Earth scientists had developed. Nobody back home knew if the technology would even work properly. So far, it had exceeded all expectations. Greg was a career military officer who had spent 20 years in Earth's Space Force. He was 42 years old with gray starting to show in his dark hair. His crew trusted him because he never asked them to do anything he wouldn't do himself. Today, he was leading humanity's first deep exploration mission beyond the solar system. It was the kind of responsibility that kept him awake at night. Lisa Bennett, the chief engineer, walked onto the bridge carrying a data pad. She was 35, brilliant with machines, and had personally modified half the systems on the ship to work better. "Captain, the drive is running perfectly. We can jump another 10 light years whenever you're ready." Greg nodded. "Good work, Lisa. Let's push a bit further before we turn back. I want to see what's out here." Kevin Wright, the tactical officer, was monitoring the sensor screens. He was younger than most of the senior crew, only 28, but he had sharp instincts for danger. "Sir, I'm picking up something unusual. There's a large energy signature about 2 million kilometers away. It's moving toward us." Amy Foster, the science officer, immediately started analyzing the readings. She was known for staying calm under pressure and had a gift for languages and first contact protocols. "That's definitely artificial. The energy pattern doesn't match anything natural. I think it's a ship." Greg felt his pulse quicken. This was the moment humanity had wondered about for centuries. "All crew to alert status. Amy, prepare a first contact message in multiple formats. Kevin, bring weapons online but don't target anything. We're here to make friends, not enemies." The other ship appeared on the view screen minutes later. It was massive, easily 5 times the size of the Aurora's edge. The hull was dark metallic blue with strange symbols along the sides. It looked both ancient and powerful, like something built by a civilization that had been traveling space for thousands of years. Amy transmitted the prepared message. It contained mathematical proofs, images of Earth and humans, and peaceful greetings in multiple theoretical formats. The response came quickly, but it wasn't what anyone expected. The alien ship opened fire without warning. "Shields up," Greg shouted. The Aurora's edge shook as energy weapons struck their defensive barriers. Alarms blared across the bridge. "Kevin, return fire! All weapons!" Kevin's hands moved across his console. The Aurora's edge had been equipped with the latest human military technology. While Earth had never fought a space battle, they had spent decades preparing for the possibility. The ship's railguns fired, launching tungsten rods at incredible speeds. The results were immediate and devastating. The alien ship's shields, designed to stop energy weapons, did nothing against solid projectiles moving at relativistic speeds. The rods punched through the hull in multiple places. Secondary explosions rippled across the alien vessel. "Cease fire," Greg ordered. "Lisa, damage report," shields held. "Minor damage to external sensors. We're operational," Lisa reported, her voice steady despite the adrenaline. The alien ship was drifting, clearly disabled. Greg made a decision that would change everything. "Open a channel. All frequencies." He stood and faced the view screen. "This is Captain Greg Martinez of the human vessel Aurora's Edge. We came in peace. You fired without provocation. We defended ourselves. However, we don't want more bloodshed. If you have wounded, we offer medical assistance." For a long moment, there was no response. Then a figure appeared on the screen. It was humanoid but clearly alien, with pale blue skin, large dark eyes, and a ridge of bone across its forehead. The creature wore elaborate armor that was now scorched and damaged. "I am Commander Thexlar of the Zenthari Imperial Fleet," the alien said, speaking in a language that Amy's computer somehow translated in real time. "You have committed an act of war against the Galactic Empire. Your species will be hunted to extinction for this." Greg kept his expression neutral. "You attacked us first, Commander. We were defending ourselves. We don't know your empire or your laws. We just arrived in this region of space. We're willing to discuss this peacefully." Thexlar's face showed confusion and anger. "You defeated an Imperial warship. That's impossible. No lesser species has that capability." "We're not a lesser species," Greg said firmly. "We're humans from Earth. We're explorers, not conquerors. But we won't be attacked without defending ourselves. Now, do you need medical help or not?" The commander was silent for several seconds. Finally, he spoke. We have casualties. Our medical systems are damaged. If this is truly an offer and not a trick, we accept. Over the next hours, Greg sent Lisa and a medical team to the Zenthari ship. They found a crew of 200, with 40 wounded and 12 dead. The Zenthari watched with suspicion as the humans worked to save their injured. Lisa's team used human medical technology that seemed primitive compared to what the Zenthari normally had. But it was effective. Amy stayed on the bridge, analyzing everything the computers could pick up from the damaged alien ship. Captain, I'm learning a lot from their data transmissions. The Zenthari Empire controls hundreds of star systems. They've been the dominant power in this region of space for over 3,000 years. They consider themselves superior to all other species. That explains why they shot first, Kevin muttered. They assumed we were primitives who wandered into their territory. Greg paced the bridge, thinking through the implications. Amy, can you learn their language properly? We need to communicate better than through computer translation. I'm already working on it. Their language is complex but logical. Give me a few days and I'll be conversational. When the medical team returned, Lisa pulled Greg aside. Captain, their technology is incredible in some ways but outdated in others. Their ship is built to last centuries, and their energy systems are far beyond ours. But their weapons and defenses haven't changed in a very long time. I think they've been so dominant that they stopped innovating. Greg absorbed this information. It was a crucial insight. That's how we won. They didn't expect solid projectiles because nobody uses them anymore. Exactly. Their shields are designed for the threats they know. We were something completely new. Commander Thexelar contacted them again before they left. His attitude had shifted slightly, though pride still showed in his voice. Captain Martinez, you and your crew have fought with honor, even showing mercy to defeated enemies. This is not common in our experience. However, my duty requires me to report this incident to the Imperial Council. They will decide what happens next. We understand, Commander. For what it's worth, we don't want war. We just want to explore and perhaps trade with other species. But we won't be conquered or enslaved. Make sure your council understands that. Thexelar's expression was unreadable. The council has never negotiated with a species that defeated us in battle. I don't know what they'll do. But I will tell them everything that happened here truthfully. Perhaps that will matter. The channel closed. Greg turned to his crew. Set course for Earth, best possible speed. We need to warn them about what's coming. As the Aurora's edge turned toward home, jumping back through space faster than light, Greg stood alone in his quarters looking at images of Earth. He had left on a mission of exploration and was returning with news that would change humanity's future forever. Out there among the stars, humanity wasn't alone. There was an empire ancient and powerful that now knew humans existed. The question was simple. Would there be peace or war? Greg suspected that answer would be decided soon, and it wouldn't be entirely up to him. He had started something that nobody could stop now. Humanity had crashed into the Galactic Order, and the collision was just beginning. He thought about Commander Thexelar and the Zenthari. They were warriors but not monsters. They could be reasoned with, perhaps even befriended, but their empire, built on 3,000 years of unquestioned dominance, would not easily accept humanity as equals. The journey home would take weeks. Greg used that time to prepare detailed reports and strategic assessments. Kevin analyzed the combat data dozens of times, looking for patterns and weaknesses. Amy immersed herself in studying the Zenthari language and culture, learning everything she could from the data they had captured. Lisa worked on improving their weapons and defenses, knowing they might need every advantage. When Earth finally appeared on their screens, Greg felt both relief and anxiety. They had survived first contact, but they had also possibly started an interstellar incident that could lead to humanity's extinction or its ascension to being a true spacefaring civilization. The Aurora's edge entered Earth orbit, and messages immediately flooded their communication systems. Everyone wanted to know what they had found. Greg prepared to tell them the truth. Humanity was no longer alone, and their new neighbors had guns. News of the encounter spread across the Zenthari Empire faster than anyone expected. Commander Thexelar's report reached the Imperial Council within days, and the reaction was immediate and intense. The council chamber, located on the capital world of Zenthara Prime, erupted into heated debate. 5 elder species formed the council, each representing civilizations that had joined together 3,000 years ago. to create the empire. They sat in a circular chamber carved from ancient stone, a reminder of how long they had ruled. The arrival of humans changed everything they thought they knew about the galaxy. High Counselor Vexum, leader of the Xanthari species, spoke first. His voice carried authority built over 2 centuries of rule. A single primitive vessel from an unknown world has destroyed one of our warships. This cannot stand. We must respond with overwhelming force before this species becomes a larger threat. Another counselor representing the Krell species disagreed. We should investigate first. Perhaps this was a unique weapon or a lucky strike. We don't know enough about these humans. The debate continued for hours. Some counselors wanted immediate military action. Others urged caution. Finally, they reached a decision. An ultimatum would be sent to Earth. The humans would submit to imperial authority, dismantle their military, and accept occupation. If they refused, the Empire would send a fleet to enforce compliance. The message was transmitted across space, reaching Earth 3 weeks after the Aurora's Edge returned home. President Victoria Hayes read it in her office, surrounded by her top advisors. She was 58 years old and had led Earth through economic reforms and the expansion of the space program. Nothing in her career had prepared her for this moment. "They're demanding total surrender," she said quietly, passing the message to Admiral Chris Donovan. "They want us to give up everything we've built." Admiral Donovan read the ultimatum with growing anger. He was a decorated military officer who had helped design Earth's space defense systems. "We can't accept this, Madam President. If we surrender now, humanity becomes a subject species. Everything we are, everything we could be, ends." Nathan Cole, the chief diplomatic advisor, offered a different perspective. "We should try negotiation. Perhaps we can find a peaceful solution. War with an empire that controls hundreds of worlds would be suicide." Victoria looked at each person in the room. "I want options. Real options. Not fantasies about winning an impossible war or dreams about negotiating with people who see us as inferior." Greg Martinez was called to the meeting. He had spent the past weeks being debriefed by every intelligence agency on Earth. Now he stood before the president and her cabinet, tired but determined. "Captain Martinez," Victoria said, "you've met these Xanthari. You've seen their technology and fought their ships. Give me your honest assessment. Can we survive if they come for us?" Greg chose his words carefully. "Madam President, the Xanthari are powerful. Their empire is vast and their technology is advanced. But they have a weakness. They've been dominant for so long that they've stopped innovating. Their weapons and tactics haven't changed in centuries. We surprised them once. We can do it again." "One battle doesn't win a war," Admiral Donovan said. "Even if we can match them ship for ship, they have hundreds of ships. We have a handful." "That's true," Greg acknowledged. "We can't win a conventional war, but we don't have to fight a conventional war. We need to change the game entirely." Lisa Bennett, who had accompanied Greg to the meeting, spoke up. She had been analyzing Xanthari technology non-stop since their return. "I've studied their systems extensively. Their empire is built on centralized control. They have communication hubs, supply depots, and administrative centers that keep everything running. If we disrupted those systems, the empire would struggle to coordinate a response." Kevin Wright added his tactical assessment. "They fight like they expect everyone else to fight, with big fleets meeting in open space. They won't expect small, fast strike forces hitting their logistics. We could hurt them without ever facing their main military strength." Nathan Cole shook his head. "That's still war. You're talking about attacking their infrastructure. That would make peace impossible." "Peace is already impossible on their terms," Greg said firmly. "They want us to surrender completely. I'm proposing something different. We show them that conquering humanity would be too costly, too disruptive to their empire. Then we offer them an alternative: recognition and peaceful coexistence." Victoria Hayes listened to all the arguments. She had to make a decision that would affect all of humanity. "How many ships can we field, Admiral?" "We have 3 vessels capable of deep space combat," Donovan replied. "The Aurora's Edge and 2 newer ships, the Liberty and the Defiance. We have 6 more under construction, but they won't be ready for months." 3 ships against an empire," Victoria said softly. Then her expression hardened. "Captain Martinez, you'll command this operation. Your objective is not to conquer or destroy, but to force the empire to negotiate seriously. Make them understand that we won't be subjugated, but leave the door open for peace." "Can you do that?" Greg stood straighter. Yes, Madam President. We can do that. Over the next weeks, Earth prepared for what seemed like an impossible mission. The 3 ships were upgraded with new weapons and better shields. Amy Foster was promoted to lead the diplomatic team that would accompany the military mission. Her job was to communicate with any Xanthari they encountered and to broadcast messages across Imperial space. Rachel Moore joined the team as official ambassador. She was 50 years old and had negotiated peace agreements on Earth for decades. She understood that successful diplomacy wasn't about weakness or compromise, but about finding solutions that served everyone's interests. She was exactly the kind of person humanity needed for this mission. The night before departure, Greg walked through the Aurora's edge, checking on his crew. Most were the same people who had been with him on the first mission. They knew what they were getting into this time. Lisa was in the engine room making final adjustments. "Captain, we're ready. The new weapons are integrated and the engines are running better than ever." Kevin was on the bridge reviewing tactical plans. "Sir, I've identified 12 priority targets in Xanthari space. Communication hubs and supply depots that are lightly defended but strategically important. We hit those and we'll get their attention." Amy was studying star maps of Imperial space. "I've been learning more about Xanthari culture and politics. Not all species in the Empire are happy with central control. If we message this right, we might find unexpected allies." The 3 ships launched together, jumping into faster-than-light travel towards Xanthari space. The journey took 2 weeks. During that time, Greg met with his officers and Ambassador Moore to refine their strategy. "We need to be clear about our message," Rachel said during one meeting. "We're not terrorists or pirates. We're a sovereign species defending our right to exist independently. Every action we take needs to support that narrative." "Agreed," Greg said. "We hit military and logistics targets only. No civilian installations. No unnecessary casualties. We're professionals, not criminals." They emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of Xanthari space. The first target was a communication hub orbiting a gas giant. It was an automated station with minimal crew, designed to relay messages across several star systems. The attack was quick and precise. Kevin's weapons took out the hub's power systems without destroying it completely. Amy immediately broadcast a message on all frequencies. "This is Captain Greg Martinez of Earth. We are a free people defending our sovereignty. The Xanthari Empire attacked us without provocation and now demands our surrender. We refuse. We will continue these operations until the Empire agrees to negotiate peace as equals." The message was repeated in multiple languages, including Xanthari and several other species' languages that Amy had learned from captured data. Then the 3 ships jumped away before any response could arrive. They struck 2 more targets over the next week, each time leaving behind the same message. The pattern was clear. Humanity was inside Imperial space, could strike anywhere, and would continue until there was real negotiation. On Xanthara Prime, the Imperial Council watched with growing alarm as reports came in. High Counselor Vexam called an emergency session. "These humans are making us look weak. Every species in the Empire is seeing that we cannot protect our own infrastructure. They're also making us look unreasonable," another counselor pointed out. "Their messages are being heard across dozens worlds. They claim we attacked first and demanded surrender. Is this true?" "Commander Thexelar's ship fired first," Vexam admitted reluctantly. "But that's standard protocol when encountering unknown vessels in Imperial space." "Perhaps that protocol needs to change," a younger counselor suggested. "These humans are proving more capable than we assumed. Maybe negotiation is wiser than escalation." Vexam slammed his hand on the table. "We do not negotiate with species that attack us. I'm dispatching Grand Admiral Zorthan with a fleet to hunt down these human ships and destroy them." Zorthan was a legend in the Xanthari military. He had fought in dozens of campaigns and never lost a battle. He commanded respect from every warrior in the Empire. When he received his orders, he assembled 50. The weeks before the meeting with Grand Admiral Zorthan were among the most tense in human history. Greg and his task force continued their operations across Xanthari space, but with more purpose now. They weren't just disrupting Imperial logistics anymore. They were sending a message to everyone watching. Kevin had refined their tactics to an art form. The 3 human ships would appear near a target, strike quickly and vanish before Xanthari forces could respond. But they never caused unnecessary destruction. Supply convoys were disabled, not destroyed. Automated stations were shut down, not blown apart. And always Amy's message followed, "This is humanity. We seek peace, but we will defend our freedom. The Empire demands our surrender. We offer mutual respect instead. The choice is yours." The messages were spreading further than anyone expected. Amy had discovered that many species within the Empire monitored the same communication channels. Humans weren't just talking to the Zenthari anymore. They were talking to everyone. Lisa made a discovery that changed their strategy even more. While analyzing captured data from a damaged Zenthari relay, she found something interesting. "Captain, look at this. The Empire's communication network isn't as secure as they think. I can access their systems and monitor their military traffic." "Can you do more than monitor?" Greg asked. Lisa grinned. "I can inject false data. Make them think we're in places we're not. Create confusion about our numbers and capabilities. Basically, I can wage information warfare against them." "Do it," Greg ordered. "But carefully. We want to frustrate them, not make them so angry they stop thinking rationally." Over the next days, Zenthari forces across multiple sectors received reports of human ships that didn't exist. Fleets were dispatched to defend locations that were never attacked. Supply routes were changed based on false intelligence. The Empire's military coordination began to break down under the chaos. Grand Admiral Zorthan watched all this from his flagship, the Eternal Judgment. He was 200 years old, which was middle-aged for his species. He had gray skin that had darkened with age and bore the ceremonial scars of countless battles. His reputation had been built on tactical brilliance and an ability to understand his enemies. These humans confused him. They fought like no species he had ever encountered. They used weapons that shouldn't work against modern shields. They communicated openly instead of maintaining operational security. They offered mercy to defeated enemies and then attacked other targets days later. Nothing made sense according to traditional military doctrine. His second-in-command, Commander Felshar, shared his confusion. "Admiral, we've been chasing these humans for weeks. Every time we get close, they vanish. Their faster-than-light technology operates differently than ours. We can't predict where they'll appear next." "They're like ghosts," Zorthan said thoughtfully. "But ghosts don't send meeting requests. They want to talk. Why?" "Perhaps they know they cannot win a real battle," Felshar suggested. 3 ships against 50 is suicide." "Maybe," Zorthan said. "Or maybe they see something we don't. That's what worries me most. These humans seem to understand us better than we understand them." The meeting location was a barren moon in an unclaimed system, far from any imperial world. Greg chose it specifically because it was neutral ground. No species had ever claimed it. No battles had been fought there. It was just an empty rock orbiting a frozen planet. The Aurora's Edge arrived first. Greg brought only a small delegation: Lisa, Kevin, Amy, and Ambassador Rachel Moore. The other 2 ships, the Liberty and Defiance, stayed hidden nearby, ready to jump in if needed. They set up a temporary habitat on the moon's surface using prefabricated modules. It was basic but comfortable, with a meeting room, life support, and communication equipment. Rachel insisted on making it look professional. "First impressions matter," she said. "We need to look like we belong here, like this is routine for us." Zorthan's fleet arrived hours later. 50 warships emerged from faster-than-light travel and took up positions around the moon. It was an impressive show of force. The Admiral himself landed with a shuttle carrying his security detail and advisors. Greg met him at the habitat entrance. The 2 leaders studied each other for a long moment. Zorthan was taller than any human, nearly 7 feet with broad shoulders and an aura of authority built over decades of command. Greg was smaller but stood his ground with quiet confidence. "Grand Admiral," Greg said, offering a human handshake. "Thank you for meeting us." Zorthan looked at the extended hand with curiosity, then grasped it. The gesture seemed to intrigue him. "Captain Martinez, you are either very brave or very foolish to meet me with only 1 ship nearby." "Perhaps both," Greg admitted with a slight smile. "Shall we talk inside?" The meeting room was arranged with simple furniture around a table. Rachel had made sure there was nothing that could be seen as threatening. This wasn't a military briefing. This was diplomacy. Rachel opened the conversation, and her first question caught everyone off guard. "Grand Admiral, why does your empire need to expand? What are you afraid of?" Zorthan's advisors looked offended, but the Admiral himself seemed thoughtful. "We are not afraid. We bring order to chaos. We unite species that would otherwise fight among themselves. We create stability, do you?" Rachel asked gently. "Because from what we've observed, Your empire spends most of its energy controlling the species you've conquered. You call it stability. They might call it oppression. You know nothing of galactic history, Felshar said angrily. Before the Empire, this region of space was filled with war. We ended that. You ended it by conquering everyone, Kevin pointed out. That's not peace. That's domination. Amy spoke up, her voice calm and measured. We've been monitoring your communication networks. Did you know that 23 species within your empire have active resistance movements? That your military is spread so thin that most of your ships are used for occupation rather than defense? Zorthon leaned back in his chair. You have been busy. But what is your point? That our empire has problems? All governments have problems. It does not change the reality that we are powerful and you are not. That's where you're wrong, Lisa said. She activated a holographic display showing data from their operations. We've disrupted your supply lines across 6 sectors. We've shut down communication hubs that coordinate 36 star systems. We've created enough confusion that your military doesn't know where we'll strike next. And we've done all this with 3 ships. She let that sink in before continuing. Now imagine if Earth builds 100 ships, or 1,000. Imagine if we share our technology with some of those 23 resistance movements. Your empire wouldn't fall overnight, but it would start crumbling from within. Are you threatening us? Felshar demanded. No, Greg said firmly. We're showing you that the cost of conquering humanity would be too high. But we're also here to offer an alternative. Rachel took over. Grand Admiral, your empire was built on the idea that the strong dominate the weak. But that's not the only way civilizations can interact. What if instead of conquest you had cooperation? What if instead of subjects you had partners? You want us to abandon 3,000 years of tradition based on the word of a species we just met? Zorthon asked. We want you to recognize reality, Greg said. The galaxy is changing. Your empire can change with it or be torn apart by species that refuse to submit. We're offering you a chance to evolve peacefully. Amy pulled up more data. Look at your own empire's history. Innovation has stagnated. Your technology hasn't significantly advanced in over 1,000 years. You've been so focused on control that you've stopped growing. Meanwhile, humanity went from basic spaceflight to faster-than-light travel in less than a century. We did it because we had to innovate or die. What exactly are you proposing? Zorthon asked. His tone was different now, less aggressive and more curious. Rachel laid out the human proposal. A treaty of mutual recognition. Earth becomes a sovereign entity, recognized as independent by the Empire. We establish trade relations and open communication. In exchange, we stop our raids and share some of our technology. What technology? Felshar asked suspiciously. Medical advances, Lisa said. We've developed treatments for several diseases that we know affect multiple species in your empire. We offer them freely as a gesture of good faith. Zorathon was silent for a long time. His advisors whispered among themselves, clearly divided on how to respond. Finally, the Admiral spoke. Even if I agreed, the Imperial Council would never accept this. They see any recognition of another species as weakness. Then help us change their minds, Greg said. You're the most respected military leader in the Empire. Your voice carries weight. Tell them that fighting humanity would cost too much and gain too little. Tell them that a treaty serves the Empire's interests better than a war. And if they refuse? Zorthon asked. Then we continue what we've been doing, Kevin said bluntly. We make it impossible for your empire to function normally until they agree to negotiate. Rachel added a softer note. But we don't think it will come to that. We've been broadcasting our messages across Imperial space. Regular citizens are hearing them. They're seeing that the Empire attacked us first, that we offered peace and were refused. Public opinion matters even in your... The Imperial Council chamber had never been so full of tension. Zorthon stood before the 5 counselors, having just finished presenting the human proposal. The silence that followed felt heavy enough to crush stone. High Counselor Vexim spoke first, his voice filled with barely controlled anger. You want us to recognize these humans as equals? A species that has attacked our infrastructure and made us look weak throughout the Empire. They attacked after we attacked them first, Zorthon said calmly. And they have demonstrated that continued conflict would be extremely costly. The humans are not asking us to surrender. They are offering mutual respect and trade. That is very different. Counselor Draven, representing the Krell species, leaned forward. Tell us honestly, Grand Admiral. Can we defeat them militarily? Zorthon considered his answer carefully. In a direct fleet battle, yes. We have more ships and more firepower, but they do not fight directly. They strike our supply lines, our communications, our logistics. They can be anywhere and we cannot predict their movements. Their faster-than-light technology is fundamentally different from ours. So we cannot catch them, another counselor said. Not easily, Zorthon admitted. And even if we destroy their 3 ships, Earth will build more. They have shown remarkable technological advancement. In time, they could become a serious threat, or they could become valuable allies. The choice we make now determines which. Counselor Selrix, the youngest member at only 90 years old, spoke up. I have been monitoring the public response to the human broadcasts. Citizens across 17 worlds are discussing them. Many are questioning why we attacked first. Some are even calling the humans brave for standing up to us. Public opinion should not drive imperial policy, Vexum said sharply. Perhaps not, Selrix replied. But ignoring it is foolish. The humans have done something no other species has managed. They have made themselves sympathetic to our own citizens. If we crush them now, we risk creating martyrs. If we negotiate, we show strength through wisdom rather than force. The debate continued for hours. Some counselors saw the human proposal as weakness and humiliation. Others saw it as a practical solution to an unexpected problem. Zorthon answered their questions honestly, neither defending the humans nor condemning them, simply reporting what he had observed. They are different from any species we have encountered, he told the council. They do not think like we do. They were willing to meet with me surrounded by 50 warships because they believed in their proposal's strength. That takes either foolishness or remarkable courage. I believe it is the latter. While the council debated on Zenthara Prime, something unexpected was happening across Imperial space. Amy's cultural broadcasts, which had been running continuously during their raids, were having an effect that nobody had predicted. On the industrial world of Kelvar III, young Zenthari workers gathered in secret to listen to human music. The rhythms were strange and the lyrics spoke of freedom and individual dreams. It was unlike anything in traditional Imperial culture. On the academic planet of Tresh, students debated human philosophy and political systems. The idea that a government could serve the people rather than rule them was revolutionary. Some professors tried to shut down these discussions. Others encouraged them, seeing intellectual value in examining different perspectives. On the mining colonies of the Outer Rim, where conditions were harsh and imperial control was resented, the human message of refusing to submit to unjust authority resonated powerfully. Underground movements that had existed for years suddenly had new inspiration. The Empire's intelligence services reported all of this to the Council. The humans were not just a military problem anymore. They were becoming a cultural phenomenon. Their very existence was forcing Imperial citizens to question assumptions that had been unchallenged for millennia. Back on the barren moon, Greg and his team waited. The Liberty and Defiance had moved closer, ready to evacuate everyone if negotiations collapsed. But running would only delay the inevitable. If the Empire decided to hunt them, there was nowhere in the galaxy far enough to hide permanently. Rachel spent the time preparing contingency plans. If they reject the proposal, we need to decide what comes next. Do we continue the raids? Do we try to build alliances with resistance movements within the Empire? Do we return to Earth and prepare for full-scale war? All of the above, Greg said. But I don't think it will come to that. Zorthon understands what we're offering. He's smart enough to see that this serves everyone's interests. You have a lot of faith in one alien admiral, Kevin said. I have faith in logic, Greg replied. War with us costs them resources, stability, and prestige. Peace costs them nothing except pride. Eventually, practical concerns will outweigh ego. Amy was monitoring Imperial communications constantly. Captain, there's increased chatter about the Council's debate. It's not unanimous. Some counselors are pushing hard for the treaty. Others want to make an example of us. It could go either way. Lisa was running simulations on her equipment. If they attack, I give us a 12% chance of escaping. That's assuming everything goes perfectly, and they don't bring in more ships. Those are terrible odds, Kevin said. Better than zero, Lisa replied with dark humor. On the 4th day of waiting, Zorthon's flagship returned to the system. Greg watched its approach on the sensors, trying to read meaning into its trajectory and speed. Was this an attack formation? A diplomatic return? The uncertainty was maddening. The Admiral contacted them directly. Captain Martinez, I have news from the Council. However, I prefer to deliver it in person. May I return to the moon? Of course, Grand Admiral, Greg said, trying to keep his voice steady. We'll be waiting. When Zorthon entered the habitat this time, his expression was unreadable. He sat down across from the human delegation and was silent for a moment, seeming to gather his thoughts. The Council has debated your proposal extensively, he began. The vote was not unanimous. Some councilors wanted to reject it outright and continue military operations. Others saw the wisdom in what you offered. Greg felt his heart pounding but kept his face neutral. Rachel sat perfectly still, every bit the professional diplomat. Amy, Lisa, and Kevin waited in tense silence. In the end, Zorthon continued, the Council has decided to accept the framework of your proposal, but with modifications. Relief flooded through Greg, but he remained cautious. What modifications? First, the treaty recognizes Earth as a sovereign entity, as you requested. Second, trade relations and communication channels will be established. Third, you will share the medical technologies you offered. Those all sound like what we proposed, Rachel said carefully. What are the modifications? Zorthon's expression shifted slightly. The Council insists on additional provisions. Other species within the Empire may petition for similar recognition if they meet certain criteria. They must demonstrate technological capability, cultural cohesion, and the ability to defend their sovereignty. Essentially, the Empire is creating a new category, associate members rather than subject species. Greg exchanged glances with his team. This was more than they had hoped for. You're fundamentally changing how the Empire operates. Yes, Zorthon said quietly. The Council does not yet fully realize it, but you have forced us to evolve. We cannot maintain 3,000 years of unquestioned dominance when species like humanity can emerge and challenge us. Better to adapt our system than watch it collapse. Some on the Council must have opposed this strongly, Rachel observed. High Councilor Vexham argued against it until the very end, Zorthon admitted. But even he could not deny the practical benefits. If we grant limited autonomy to capable species, we reduce the military resources needed for occupation. We can focus on actual threats rather than internal control, and we may gain innovation from species that are free to develop their own ideas. Amy spoke up. Grand Admiral, may I ask what convinced you personally to support this? Zorthon was quiet for a moment. I have spent 2 centuries fighting for the Empire. I have seen countless species submit or be crushed. But I have never seen a species fight the way you do. You do not fight for conquest. You fight for the right to exist on your own terms. That is something I can respect, he paused, then continued. Also, I am old enough to remember when the Empire was younger, when we united species through cooperation rather than conquest. Perhaps it is time we remembered those principles. The formal treaty negotiations took another 3 days. Lawyers and diplomats from both sides worked through details and language. The final document was surprisingly straightforward. Earth was recognized as an independent sovereign entity. The Zenthari Empire would not attack or interfere with human territory. Trade and cultural exchange were encouraged. Humans would share medical technology as promised. Other species could petition for similar status if they met defined criteria. Greg signed the document on behalf of Earth, with President Victoria Hayes's authorization transmitted from home. Zorthon signed on behalf of the Imperial Council. It was a moment that would be remembered in history books for both civilizations. This is not the end of our relationship, Zorthon said, as they finalized the treaty. It is the beginning. There will be challenges and disagreements, but we will face them as equals, rather. The Aurora's Edge entered Earth's orbit to a hero's welcome. Ships from every nation transmitted congratulations. Space stations displayed messages of celebration. Greg and his crew had left Earth facing the threat of extinction. They returned having secured humanity's independence and changed the political structure of the galaxy. President Victoria Hayes met them personally at the main space station. She embraced Greg warmly, something she rarely did in public. Captain, you and your crew have done something extraordinary. You didn't just save humanity, you gave us a future among the stars. We had help, Madam President, Greg said, gesturing to his team. Lisa kept our ships running. Kevin kept us one step ahead of enemy forces. Amy opened communication channels we didn't know existed, and Ambassador Moore negotiated a treaty that serves everyone's interests. Rachel stepped forward. Madam President, we need to talk about implementation. The treaty creates opportunities but also challenges. Other species will approach us for alliances. The Empire will test our resolve. We need to be ready. I know, Victoria said. I've already started assembling a team to handle galactic relations. Rachel, I want you to lead it. You'll have whatever resources you need. Over the following weeks, Earth transformed. The treaty with the Zenthari Empire was just the beginning. News of humanity's existence spread rapidly through galactic communication networks. Species from across known space sent messages of greeting, requests for trade, and offers of alliance. Some messages were friendly. The Vrel Confederation, a group of species that had been conquered by the Zenthari centuries ago, sent representatives to Earth. They wanted to learn how humanity had achieved recognition and whether they could do the same. Other messages were less welcoming. The Krax Dominion, a rival power to the Zenthari Empire, saw humanity as potential pawns in their own political games. They offered military technology and support, clearly hoping to use humans against their enemies. Greg was promoted to admiral and given command of Earth's expanding space fleet. His first meeting with the new diplomatic team included representatives from a dozen Earth nations and specialists. In everything from trade law to xenobiology, we need to establish principles for how we interact with the galaxy, Rachel said during the first meeting. The Zenthari knew who they were and what they stood for, even if we disagreed with their methods. We need the same clarity. Nathan Cole, who had been appointed as Rachel's deputy, laid out the basics. We should offer friendship to all species but alliances with none, at least initially. We trade freely but remain militarily independent. We share knowledge but protect critical technologies. We're helpful but not naive. That's good for general policy, Greg said. But what about specific situations? The Vrel want our help gaining recognition from the Empire. The Krax want us to join their power block. We can't just smile and avoid every complicated situation. Amy Foster, now head of the Xenocultural Studies Department, offered her perspective. We need to remember that we're still learning about galactic politics. Every species we meet has thousands of years of history and prejudices we don't understand. We should move slowly and ask questions before making commitments. Lisa, who had been appointed as Chief Technology Advisor, added a practical concern. We also need to accelerate our technological development. Right now, we have some advantages in weapons and faster-than-light travel. But other species have tech we can barely understand. If we want to remain independent, we need to close those gaps. Earth's industrial capacity went into overdrive. New shipyards were built in orbit around the Moon and Mars. The 3 combat vessels were being replicated into a fleet of 30, with plans for 100 within 5 years. Research facilities focused on analyzing and improving upon captured Zenthari technology. But the most significant changes were happening across the Zenthari Empire itself. The treaty with humanity had created a precedent that couldn't be ignored. Within 6 months, 8 other species had petitioned for recognition as associate members rather than subject species. The Imperial Council was overwhelmed. High Counselor Vexim, who had opposed the human treaty from the beginning, found himself fighting a losing battle against change. The younger counselors, led by Selric, saw opportunity in the new system. Species that governed themselves required fewer imperial resources to control and could focus on innovation and productivity. Zorthan, who had retired from active military service, became an unexpected advocate for continued reform. He traveled to several worlds within the Empire, speaking about his experiences with humanity and encouraging species to embrace change rather than fear it. On one such world, a Vrel colony that had been seeking independence for decades, he gave a speech that was broadcast across the Empire. For 3,000 years, we believed that strength meant control and power meant domination. But the humans showed us a different kind of strength. They stood alone against an empire and refused to bend. Not through greater firepower, but through determination and clever thinking. Perhaps it is time we learned from them. Not everyone was happy with the changes. On some imperial worlds, conservative factions protested what they saw as the empire's decline. Military officers who had built careers on conquest and occupation found themselves suddenly without purpose. Criminal organizations saw opportunity in the disruption and increased their activities. Earth had to deal with these complications too. 6 months after the treaty was signed, A Xanthari extremist group calling themselves the Purists attacked a human trade ship near the border of Imperial space. The ship was badly damaged and 3 crew members were killed. The incident created an immediate crisis. Many on Earth called for military retaliation. Others urged caution, not wanting to break the fragile peace. Greg found himself back in President Hayes' office, this time with a much more complicated situation than simple combat. "Admiral, what are our options?" Victoria asked. Greg had spent days considering this question. "We can't let the attack go unanswered. That would make us look weak and invite more violence. But we also can't attack Imperial targets without proof that the Empire itself was involved. That would destroy everything we've built." Rachel added her perspective. "The Imperial Council has condemned the attack and offered to help hunt down the Purists. If we work with them rather than against them, we strengthen the partnership and show that extremists can't derail progress." "Joint military operations with the Empire?" Nathan looked skeptical. 6 months ago they were trying to conquer us. "And now they're our partners," Rachel said firmly. "The treaty means something. Both sides need to prove we can work together when challenged." Victoria made the decision. "Admiral Martinez, you'll lead a joint task force with the Xanthari to hunt down these Purists. Show the galaxy that humanity and the Empire can cooperate. But Greg, be careful. This could go wrong in 100 different ways." The joint operation was unprecedented. Greg commanded a mixed force of human and Xanthari ships, with Zorthan serving as senior advisor. The cultural differences were challenging at first. Xanthari officers expected rigid hierarchy and formal communication. Human crews were more casual and flexible, but they found common ground in professional competence. Both sides were skilled at their jobs and learned to respect each other's expertise. When they tracked the Purists to a hidden base in an asteroid field, the operation went flawlessly. Human sensors located the base. Xanthari weapons disabled their defenses. A joint boarding team captured the extremists with minimal casualties. The success was broadcast across both human and Imperial space. It showed that cooperation was possible and effective. More importantly, it demonstrated that the treaty was real, not just words on paper. As the first year of the treaty concluded, Rachel organized a major conference on Earth. Representatives from the Xanthari Empire, newly recognized associate members, independent species, and various galactic organizations attended. It was the largest diplomatic gathering in Earth's history. The conference addressed practical matters like trade routes, communication protocols, and conflict resolution procedures. But the underlying theme was more profound. The galaxy was changing from a place where power meant everything to a place where cooperation could be advantageous. Not everyone attending was optimistic. The Crax Dominion sent representatives who spent most of their time trying to recruit allies against the Xanthari. Some species worried that humanity was disrupting a stable system, even if that system was unjust. Others feared that change would lead to chaos and war. But there were hopeful moments too. Young representatives from different species met and found they had more in common than their elders. Trade agreements were signed that would have been impossible under the old imperial system. Cultural exchange programs were established, allowing species to learn from each other. On the final night of the conference, Greg stood on a balcony overlooking the city with Zorthan. The Xanthari admiral had traveled to Earth specifically for the event and had spent the week in intense discussions with various delegations. "Do you think this will last?" Greg asked. "Or will everything collapse back into the old patterns?" Zorthan was quiet for a long moment, watching the lights of the city. "Change is never easy. There will be setbacks and conflicts. Some species